to be clear, I used to buy ammunition by the pallet for like personal shooting and practice. But
Oh God, now you made me sick. Oh, really? I've
yeah,
only dreamed about that.
Yeah,
Oh
we dream
God,
about stuff like that. I mean, we
pallet.
no,
Oh
we
man.
don't have the funds or the
You mean like
resources to do the
legitimate
thing.
forklift necessary to get it off the truck? That kind of pallet? You mean that?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
damn.
I've been to something like 2,300 hours of training, probably spent $250,000 going to training classes and doing that sort of thing. And I could have, if you want to talk about being frugal, like with training, the best thing that you can do to be frugal with your training is get your mind right before you go and do it so that you get the most value out of it.
Welcome to episode 31 of the Frugal Firearms Podcast, the podcast that's absolutely giddy tonight to bring on a person who, to me, is celebrity. Now, we don't typically do shows that have celebrities on them, but if you've ever listened to me talk in the past about the inspiration of this show, that guy's, I'm looking at him right now on Zoom, and he's going to speak up here pretty soon. That would be Mr. John Johnston, who is a person who I value tremendously, and he doesn't even know why. And I'll tell you part of the reason. There was a point in my life when I really needed something to do as kind of a distraction. And Ken and I had talked for many years about guns, and some of those conversations were so good that I thought, damn, if we'd only recorded that, that would have been a good podcast. But then listening to the 366, and I listened to every single one of them, episodes of Ballistic Radio, which are, by the way, still available at ballisticradio.com, I became inspired to do a show that John Johnston used to do. And he is still in the training space, hasn't done a podcast in a while, but he owes me, I think, these few minutes of time to share, because the man is chock full of wisdom. And I used to listen to his shows sometimes 2-3 times just to get every nugget of information out of it. So first off, I'm going to bring on Ken. Ken, tell us about those old conversations we used to have.
Oh yeah, I mean, Craig and I have been friends for 50 years, and we we started when we were teenagers probably, and obviously we moved into firearms later on, and the science of them as well, and cars and guns just were some of the things that we talked about, and I've never really given up either of those subjects. We continue to talk about them both, and I've started a collection. Craig has his own collection, and it's great fun.
My collection of guns compared to your collection of guns, Ken, would be about the same comparison as our collection of podcast episodes versus John's.
Yeah, you probably got about 10%.
It would be about, well, actually, we're less than 10% of what John did. So welcome to the show, Mr. John Johnston. John, tell us who you are and tell us what you do. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it does sound a little familiar. I'm John Johnston. As far as what I do, I am pretty much completely retired from the firearms space. As far as still being involved in training, that's a stretch. A good friend of mine convinced me to come out and do a class last year, and I did, and had quite a bit of fun doing that. Had a couple things that were on the books for this year, and then for various reasons, they just ended up not working out. So I don't know if you can count teaching one class in a 3-year span as being involved in the training space, but if you can, then I guess I'm involved in the training space. Also used to host, as you pointed out, Ballistic Radio, which was a nationally syndicated show for a little while, and a podcast. Worked inside of the firearms industry for a while as a consultant. Done a little bit of everything inside of the firearms industry. So, and these days I am a soulless corporate drone and, a dad. So I was a dad before, but I'm actually trying to do a better job of that. So yeah, that's where I'm at these days.
Time is a factor, and time competes for I mean, that's,
Everything.
yeah, I mean, when we say Frugal Firearms Podcast, we're not just talking about economizing your dollars, we're talking about economizing your time and, finding balance in life and not just shooting, shooting, shooting. I mean, if some people find balance doing that, I mean, good on them. I'm not criticizing that at all if that's the thing they have the opportunity to do, but very few people can do that and can't do it forever. But I remember very distinctly in fact, the first time that we met in person was at a SHOT Show where you were standing right near 20,000 rounds, I think, of brass and an AR-15 by Daniel Defense, if I recall correctly.
You do not. It was a Knight's Armament SR-15.
Oh, it was a
Oh.
Knight's Armament. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's okay. Neither one of them pay me any money anymore. But
But you had gone through 20,000 rounds in that gun over a period of, I don't know how long. I think it was measured in months.
it was
And only lubing it, but never cleaning it. And that thing was a
correct.
wreck. I mean, it looked terrible in that plexiglass case. So, what was I mean, did you get a lot of pushback on that? Like, you're not taking care of your gun. I mean, the whole idea was that you were showing that Knight's Armament stuff could be relied upon. But did what lesson did you take away from that other than paid endorsement?
Well, that was not a paid endorsement, actually.
Oh, it was not. I didn't know that.
It was not. So Knights provided the rifle for free. So in that sense, but I also gave it back to them. Now they gifted it back to me, not the exact rifle because that one is actually sitting in their museum, but they gifted me a comparable one back after the fact. But that was a nice surprise. That was not something that was agreed to ahead of time. As far as you asked two questions there, so I'll answer the first one and then I'll get to the second one.
Okay.
Did I get a lot of pushback for that? Yes, I did, but that was also kind of the point. And if we have time for a tangent, so my son is 17 and has discovered that I quite enjoy rage baiting people. And my daughter is usually the recipient of that in a very like friendly sense, and not mean spirited at all. But so you know, they think it's funny how sort of dedicated I am to that. And, the entire purpose of that, there were several, but a large purpose of that was I knew that conducting that test the way that it was conducted was going to generate quite quite a large number of people engaging with the content, some of whom would be saying things that were factually inaccurate, which would, provide me, if I'm being kind to myself, would provide me the opportunity to, educate people on the reliability of a high quality modern AR-15. And if I'm not being kind to myself, it was going to be the opportunity to tell people that they were dumb on the internet, which at the time was my primary business.
That was your motivation, yeah.
Well, it was certainly part of the business model. I'd also been inspired by Todd Green and the endurance tests that he had done with pistols, and also Pat Rogers. He had done some stuff with some Bravo Company rifles, and I had a general idea how that was going to go. There were some technical things with the SR-15 that I was curious to see how they worked out. But
was it direct impingement or was it
yeah,
a gas piston gun?
Yeah, it was a DI gun. It was a DI gun. They had they have a proprietary bolt that has some features on it that increase the longevity, and they're high quality rifles. Like they're very good. So I knew it was going to do well. Didn't know it was going to do quite as well as it did. In fairness, neither did they. they were, you know, pleasantly surprised. And also when they took that rifle apart, they were impressed with the fact that it had kept running with what the, you know, what some of the mechanical parts in it had done.
Yeah, it must have been caked with carbon in certain areas, I'm certain.
Well, yeah, there was also one of the I can't remember if it was an ejector spring or an extractor spring, but one of them had broken at some point during it and it was still functioning.
Oh,
The gas ports were much larger than they had started out as rifling was still good. So, but anyway, so that was the first part of your question was kind of, um, did I get a lot of pushback? As far as what my takeaways were from that, aside from Knights makes a good gun, which they do. If you're going to shoot 20,000 rounds through a gun, it's nice if someone else pays for the ammunition. That was a takeaway from it
oh,
as well.
absolutely. I mean, we are Frugal Firearms. I'm sitting there going, man, if I had 20,000 rounds of 5.56 to go through, I'm quite certain I wouldn't. I'd probably still have 18,000 of them sitting in my garage or something like that. Because,
Well, yeah. So for that, I want to say it was Freedom. See, I want to say Arms, but that's not. I think it was Freedom Ammunition. Man, I'm getting old. I can't remember the exact name of the company, but either way, they they provided the ammunition for that, and which was nice. Now, to be clear, I used to buy ammunition by the pallet for like personal shooting and practice, but
Oh God, now you made
for,
me sick. Oh, really? I've
yeah,
well,
only dreamed about that.
yeah,
Oh
we dream
God,
about stuff like that. I mean, we
pallet?
no,
Oh
we
man.
don't have the funds or the
You mean like
resources to get the
legitimate
thing.
forklift necessary to get it off the truck? That kind of pallet? You mean that?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
damn.
Well, so at the time I lived, there was a driveway that went down to my house, and when the trucks would drop it off, they'd drop it at the top of my driveway, and I didn't have a pallet jack, and even if I did, because I used to order about 35,000 rounds of 9mm at a time, and then about 15,000 rounds of 5.56 at a time. So 50,000 rounds combined.
Okay,
But
listeners, pay attention. He said he's not really in the space anymore. You're talking to a person who used to order. I mean, just those two numbers together is 50,000 rounds.
yeah,
Just saying. Okay,
Yeah.
go
well,
ahead, John.
I guess the thing that, and I'll tie this back to the topic of the show. Um, if I was doing endurance tests or long-term tests or something like that, I preferred to, if possible, for a couple of different reasons, have someone else provide the ammunition because the training value for the firing schedule that I had to undertake to get those tests done in a timely manner, um, there wasn't as much training value as what I would do on my own. So I bought all of my ammo that I did for like classes, my own personal practice, things like that, because I could be a little more thoughtful about what I was doing with it and how I was doing it. So if something was reinforced there, it was maybe the importance of being thoughtful about, you know, where you spend rounds. That's it's a little thin. It's a little bit of a stretch, but that is something that I could tie back to it.
Oh, I think it makes perfect sense because that is the ongoing cost of participation in guns is not just, I mean, unless you feel compelled to buy the latest, greatest model or it has a different finish or, they, some other attribute that is not core to the gun, but just core to, your own desire.
Hmm.
The thing that keeps you engaged is ammunition. I mean, that's like driving. You have to buy fuel, right? So there's that investment, which, again, you have to be very maybe careful with if you're frugal, which is obviously the center of the show.
Yeah.
But do you think that other guns, I mean, now that you're not, on contract with them, would most of the guns have failed to get to 20,000? And by the way, was 20,000 like we're stopping at 20 if we get there, or could you have pushed to 30, 40?
I think we ended up at like 21 something
Okay.
or other, if I recall. Could other guns have done that? Maybe. I mean, it's asking a question like that is kind of like, and maybe this is a larger conversation that we could have about the space in general, but and I there's an irony here because I set it up this way for people to be interested, and I learned it by watching other people to set it up this way. But it's kind of like asking, hey, which car can you drive the longest without oil in it? Or, how far below E can you get the needle to go before the car runs out of gas? Which I am famous for pushing that line, unrelated. But, so the likelihood for most people that they're going to put 20,000 rounds for a rifle or a handgun, it's pretty exceedingly low. And if you have the funds to put that kind of, round count on something, you probably have the funds to properly maintain it,
Yeah.
replace parts as they need to be replaced. So it's kind of like this thing where, um, I mean, a big part of my job was getting people to pay attention to things that I was doing, right? So, and that doesn't mean that the thing that I was doing was intelligent. It just means that it was, something that people wanted to pay attention to. Sometimes people want to pay attention to things that are dumb. I mean, and don't get me wrong, it was cool. And I think that it speaks really highly to kind of like the manufacturing quality of a company like Knights or one of the other companies when you see someone just straight up neglect and abuse a firearm. Because that was straight off the rack. They didn't cherry pick that. They went out on the floor, threw one in a box, sent it to me. So kudos to them. But again, when you're looking at stuff like that, I think it's incredibly important to, filter it through your own use case. And unless you're kind of dumb like I was, or it's your job, like it also was for me, like, are you going to put 20,000 rounds through anything without maintaining it? And the answer is probably no.
Right. I mean, the closest thing I could say to ever having put 20,000 rounds through something would have to be one of my 22 long rifles. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of back over the 40 plus years I've been shooting. Yeah, I probably have a rifle that maybe is definitely over 10. If it's closer to 20, I don't know. But yeah, it's something that I practiced with and used for many, many years because it's inexpensive. I remember when you could get a 22 long rifle, plinking round for less than 2 cents a round, and that was great. Now they're up at 15 cents or whatever they're sitting at these days. But I would never have that opportunity to do that on even 9 millimeter or 5.56 or something like that, which is, and we talk about frugal. I mean, we've talked about this in the past on our show. It's why I got into reloading. You
Hmm.
know, I reload. I mean, so cleaning your brass and resizing it and picking the projectile and the powder and the primer and doing everything and getting really precise with it because obviously could be a very dangerous thing, but it's also a way to save about 50 to 70% depending on what the round is, and make it frugal. And that's where our focus has been. But yeah, definitely. I do like to watch and listen to the people who have done 20,000 rounds on something. That is interesting, and I can see where you want to watch that. And I've watched them on clickbait and YouTube and various things like that. I've gone over there to look at it and go, wow, that's really cool. Glad somebody did it, but it will never
Yeah.
probably be me unless I win the lottery. It's just not going to be me.
disclaimer for the listeners, neither Ken nor John nor I are advocating running 20,000 rounds through your rifle without cleaning it. That is
No.
not what we're saying, but it does give an interesting insight into a quality item that maybe wasn't cheap, but
Right.
your point, John.
Yeah, well, so the thing that so okay, 20,000 rounds is an extreme, um, but amongst my circle of friends, I'm pretty famous for you know shooting guns. I don't collect guns. I have some. If I'm using them, I keep them. If I'm not using them, I generally don't keep them. I'm not, especially these days, I'm not much of a collector. I would have fit more into that category when I was still working in the industry, just because. Um, but I'm pretty famous in my circle of friends for selling guns to them that I have never cleaned before. So I'm not actually like, obviously there are some firearms that you want to clean more than others, but I'm not known for cleaning firearms too frequently.
Because you've
So
learned that it wasn't necessary to keep them running. Like
yeah,
that was
well,
born of experience, not
yeah,
neglect.
there's that. I clean them when they feel like they're going to stop running, and I can usually tell that you know uh, pretty accurately. Just if you do enough of anything, once things start to not feel normal, it's not too difficult to predict what's going to come next. It's like, oh, slide velocity is reduced here. It's gonna malfunction soon. I guess I better.
Yeah, not cleaning your gun. I mean, okay. I used to be an avid trap and skeet shooter. I did that for a long time. I really enjoyed trap and skeet. And we had a guy who would come out every week and we go shooting with us. And he would never ever clean his shotgun and down the bore. And you look down the bore of his shotgun, and you're like, you've got a bunch of melted plastic wad that's inside the barrel in here. And he goes, yeah, I'm never going to change it. Because he knew exactly where the point of aim was for that shotgun. He was very good guy. He oftentimes hit 24, 25 out of, birds on a trap range. And he goes, yeah, I cleaned it once, a number of years ago before he started going. And he goes, when I did, it completely changed the point of aim, and I could never find the damn thing again. So he used to just leave that barrel just perfectly with the little plastic and filth in there. But man, he could hit those birds, those clay targets. So I'm like, okay, don't clean it. I get it. That's how it works.
I feel it's necessary to point out to the listeners that we did do shows with Modern Spartan Systems and Otis Technology that perhaps all three of us should go back and re-listen to.
Well, so you actually said something there, Ken, that and I understand it was kind of a funny anecdote, but and for Clay's gun, it doesn't matter, and so full acknowledgement of that. One of the things that I was pretty particular about is anything that would impact where the bullet was going to go in relation to where I was aiming it was something I would fix very quickly. Because what your acquaintance is doing there is like, okay, he knows where that's going to hit in relation to that gun, but he's not aiming where you should be aiming. To do that, it's Kentucky windage, right?
Yeah.
And again, for sporting plays, is pretty low stakes environment, something you're doing for fun. My primary vector for most of the things that I was thinking about were, personal protection. Shotgun barrels, funny enough, because any shotgun I ever owned was a work gun. And a work gun is classifying that as something that I may use to, defend myself or someone else or
A
take care
social gun.
of like, yeah, well, not even because like wildlife control. especially these days, I keep chickens. So I've murdered quite a few raccoons that have been trying to eat my chickens. So anyway, my point, anytime you might be launching something at something else that is alive, I think it behooves everyone to know exactly, have 100% confidence in the fact that if I aim this firearm in a standard way, the bullet is going to end up where I expect it to. Because the other issue too is, again, your friend with the shotgun that he's utilizing Kentucky windage for. Um, he's training his eyes to do something with that gun that are not going to cross over as well to a different firearm. And yet there's certainly some variation between guns. I understand that much, but I've seen the fouling on shotguns really do interesting things as far as where it's throwing patterns and where it isn't. So like he could have, for all we know, he could have been aiming a foot and a half any direction, and it's like, okay, it works for me in this. But like if you default to that with something else, that could be problematic. At least I see how that could be problematic.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that. Yeah, this was just sporting clays, but you're right. If you picked up a home defense shotgun, which was not a like an over under sporting clays, which I'm kind of referring to, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and you're in a stressful situation, and you default to, oh yeah, I always aim a foot to the left or whatever to get a center of mass hit. Yeah, that could be a game changer right there in a defensive situation.
And I'm like
Definitely.
the worst person to invite to a party because someone tells like an amusing anecdote and then I just well actually, and I apologize for that. Um, you know, but
No,
I
fine.
yeah, I do think that is, since we're having this specific conversation, um, you know, like all kidding aside, like what I was doing with my firearms, I had enough experience to have a very good understanding of where that line kind of was. I said it earlier, but and you know, this isn't something that I'm just saying, but like I could very frequently tell when things were starting to slow down or behave in ways that were were less reliable, pretty consistently. And that's not to say that I ever had a firearm randomly stop working with no warrant. Like I have had that happen, but I've had that happen with brand new guns. I actually had that happen with, oh, an M&P 45, right around when the first ones came out, the
The Gen
4-inch
1s.
model. Yeah.
I have a
And
Gen 1 M&P 45, so thank you.
great guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, great guns. They had an
When
issue
they
with the
work, I
magazines.
guess, right?
No, they work great. They had an issue with the magazine springs, and I had two or three magazines, the springs in them break to where there was no way to tell. Like with a loaded magazine, the way that you found out was you'd fire one round, it'd take the top round off of the magazine because the magazine was loaded tight enough that it could strip the top round. And then the second round in the magazine would not lift up on the follower because this, there was no spring tension. So, I
Huh.
mean, like, yeah, guns do weird things sometimes. And maybe that's kind of like the other aspect to this is I always felt pretty confident in my ability to fix any fixable malfunction that occurred in a pretty timely manner. And, there was a different direction I could go if it was a deadline gun. So, which also happens sometimes.
You've always been fast, right? I mean, how many fast coins do you have? And tell
I
people
don't have
what
it. I don't have any fast points.
I
The
thought you
one
did.
opportunity, no, nope. I've got a bunch of turbo pins. Um, I've got Three of
So
those.
tell
But I mean,
people what you mean, because people don't know what these are.
well, okay. Um, so it's pretty. So depending on which trainer you go to, it's pretty in vogue to have various range Pokemon that you can collect, which would be, you know, whatever special coin, pin, badge, something that you get for performing a certain task on the clock in a training class. So the one in particular, um, the one that you were referencing, the fast coin, I never got one of those. I did have the opportunity to shoot for one once, didn't get it. That was the fast coin was developed by Simon Golub and Todd Green. The the one that I actually have a few of, the turbo pin, would be Gabe White. His shooting standards for for doing I want to say you have to hit it's eight, it's four tests. Is it four tests? Yeah. And you get two runs of each. So, and you have to hit 50% of the eight under a certain, time scoring factor. So I've got three of those. Gabe's class is great. The turbo pins are not easy to get. He's got other pins for like different levels of shooting, but as far as like stupid human tricks, range, Pokemon stuff, I was pretty good. Um, for actual competitive shooting, which I think is a much better measure of skill, middling at best. And, again, it probably depends on the time frame that you're comparing against as well, because shooters are faster and better in 2026 than they were in 2016,
Sure.
than they were in 2006, and vice versa, or so on and so forth.
Except for perhaps Jerry Michlik, who's timeless. But other than that, yeah, I mean, your split times and your reloads and things, I remember, were ridiculously fast. I think during your shows, you used to talk, with a little bit of, quantities given about how quick some of those splits were. I don't approach any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I think that, and yeah, I'm 43 now, so the vast majority of the show was recorded. And I understand that 43 is not particularly old. It's not particularly young either, right? But I started the show. Uh, when was that? 2013. I want to say.
What was the inspiration for it? Why did you even start in podcasting?
Man, I was working at a gun store, and the owner of the gun store was advertising on local radio, and his ad exec was like, "Hey, for an extra, however much it was a month, we have a time slot on Sunday that you can have your own AM talk show." And he decided to do that, and I twisted his arm to put me in charge of it, which is kind of ironic because he did not care for me very much. It doesn't really matter too much now, but I did the show working for him for a couple of months, and um, created a lot of like the IP for it and things like that, and decided to buy it from him. So at the time, I took my life savings to buy it from him, quit my job, and hosted a radio show. And also during that time period, I had just gone through a divorce, and spent literally the last of my money buying the show. No sponsors, no anything like that. So I was sleeping on a mattress in my mom's basement, and was like, I guess I'm a radio host now. And then, you know, figured it out.
I can't speak to the financial side of it. The
Yeah.
efficacy of the show was fantastic. It was honestly the
It
best show
got
that was
better
out
as
there.
it got better as it went on.
And
You know,
sometimes changing, don't take this as a threat, Ken, but sometimes those changes were incremental when you changed co-hosts. Like I
mm,
said, Ken, you're safe. Don't worry about it.
All right, be that 50 plus years, Greg. You and I have known each other.
um, yeah, I can't speak to that. I think, if I had it to do over again, um, I wish a couple of different things. If I had it to do over again, I don't know if it would have been as successful. So, oftentimes when people retrospect and they look back at something, they're like, well, if I did this different. But I have no way of knowing that doing it different would have gone any better. I was very lucky at the quality of people that not only agreed to come on the show, but also the quality of people that worked on the show with me. And think I don't think I always appreciated that at the time. But the show certainly improved as I remove anything else from it. I certainly got better at running a live radio show, which, for the longest time, it was recorded live. So we had to hit ad breaks, you know. Um, for a while, we toyed with having callers. I distinctly remember when I made the decision to never do that again. So the show changed and evolved. It got very popular there for a little while. It was, you know, I was kind of at the forefront of that particular format in this space. Though, I was certainly not, I was certainly inspired by the Polite Society podcast that Masayu ran.
Well, everything he does is good. So there's no, I mean, he could get up and tell you what he had for breakfast. It would still be compelling for some reason.
It would certainly sound distinguished at the very least.
It would.
So,
It would. Yeah.
no, I love Mass. I had lunch with him and some mutual friends of ours. I want to say last year. Was good to see him, but Mass is a treasure. But as far as the show goes, yeah, he inspired, and I don't know if he knows that or not. I feel like I told him at one point that I was kind of inspired by the Polite Society podcast because specifically I remember he did an episode on the Harold Fish incident, which was a very intriguing series of events. And um, I found the show very compelling. And I remember having the thought, and I want to say I was driving to Massachusetts when I listened to it. And this is years before the show, before Ballistic Radio. And I'm like, oh man, this is really cool. I like this. This is interesting to me. And that was kicking around in the back of my head. And that's kind of where I sort of drew some inspiration from. But yeah, no, as I got older and was less attention seeking, and certainly and all of this stemmed from the conversation, as far as I used to talk about, on the show, like splits and stuff like that. I certainly did spend a lot of time trying to make my accomplishments seem important. You know, so that would be kind of what I'd say. As far as am I fast or not these days, maybe I don't know. Whether or not that matters, maybe it could not. Kind of depends.
I think it's a bit
So,
like, I mean, not that practice isn't important, but it's slightly like riding a bike because you probably don't learn or don't unlearn the inherent skill that underlies the speed.
well, I think that um, this I can speak to a little bit. So the last turbo pin I got, um, Gabe White teaches every year, usually at a range not too far from my house. So he comes out and teaches, stays with me. I get to go take his class. So and it didn't get to last year. Probably not going to get to this year, but like the year before that, took his class, got a turbo pin, and I had not literally had not fired a handgun in the space between the year before when I had taken his class and when I took his class again. But as far as, as far as the science behind that, and John Hearn could speak to this a little bit more intelligently than I could, but if we're talking about levels of competence and training a skill to automaticity, I'm certainly not as good.
I'm going to
Go
interrupt
ahead.
you. Can you go through the levels of competence?
Competency?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
That's a very important lesson that I think, and recognizing where you are on that spectrum is important.
I don't know that everyone, so
Well,
this,
being
this will,
honest about where you are, I think, is important because it tells you, it informs your next steps.
I think it might be impossible for people to be honest about where they are because generally, if you're not very good, you like to think that you're, and this is Dunning-Kruger. So like I'm, oversimplifying, a very well understood concept. So please, this is not an original thought, but, generally, and this is what Dunning-Kruger, says is if you're not great at something, you tend to overestimate your level of skill in that topic area. And it could be anything, right? And if you are really good at something, you tend to underestimate your skill in that. So that's the Dunning-Kruger piece of this. It's very difficult to be honest. I think that's with yourself for good, for better, or for worse. And I think that's why, if this is something you're into and it's something you want to do, actually measuring against known standards is kind of important. It's like going to the gym. Like you wouldn't pick up weights that didn't have any labels on them. And probably if you're going to go to the trouble of going to the gym and picking up weights, you're going to track what you did so that you can see incremental improvement or see incremental, loss of strength or whatever it is, right? So if you're tracking your shooting performance against known standards, that's kind of a piece of it. But as far as the levels of competency, generally, and again, gross oversimplification, and I'm going to break this down into 4 different levels. It's not actually 4 different levels. It's more like a never-ending spiral.
Well, it's a continuum, but I mean, if you did,
yeah, sure,
the major milestones along the way.
Yeah, again, for the format of the show and in the brief time period that we have, so generally for any skill, right, you can be unconsciously incompetent. And I don't use incompetent as a pejorative. It's just, incompetent as in the literal sense of the word. You just don't know. So you're unconsciously incompetent. You don't know how to do a thing, and you really don't know that you don't know how to do a thing or how difficult the thing is, right? And then the example that I used to use would be like piano. So if you're malls really aren't as much of a thing anymore, but let's say you're at an airport and someone's playing Rachmaninoff on a piano at the airport and they're making it look just effortless. It's like, wow, that's really cool. But if you sit down at the keys and you've never touched a piano before, the first time you make this cacophony of noise that is, something that would wake the dead or get the cats in the neighborhoods yowling, you've suddenly hopped from unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent. So you still don't know how to do the thing, but you're at least aware that you don't know how to do the thing.
Does it
right?
help if a trainer tells someone that? Or do you think or is that discouraging? I'll give you an example. When my youngest son, used to try to play, and I say try to play violin, He just wasn't progressing. And I told him that he was making sounds that reminded me of a dying goat. Now, I'm pretty sure that discouraged the hell out of him. But, it achieved the objective of either getting him to quit or getting him to be serious about practicing.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, here, ask me that in a second. So let's get through the levels of competency, and then I'll circle back to that. And if I don't, please remind me. Um, so someone is now consciously incompetent. They know that they're not able to do a thing, and we'll put a little star next to that and come back to the thing that you said, because I think that's a great question, and worth answering. But you'll see in a second. Let's say someone decides that they want to get better at the thing, and they practice and they work at it, and they get to a point where if they're actively thinking about the thing, they can do the thing. They are now consciously competent, right? If they squint one eye and focus real hard, they can play chopsticks or whatever it is. But with enough practice, you eventually, with enough dedicated effort, practice, maybe a little luck, I don't know, potentially, certainly some encouragement, which will bring me back to the question you asked me. You can get to unconsciously competent. Another word for that would be automaticity. Another word for that would be kind of like flow state, right? If you really wanted to get down into it, you could get into the clinical definition, go into transient hypofrontality. But suffice to say, it's the ability to do something relatively complex without dedicating too much conscious cognitive ability to it. And, that is, some people talk about like the 10,000 hour principle. I don't think it's 10,000 hours. I'm pretty sure that, I'm pretty sure that number has been debunked. Not enough to say definitively, but I feel like it has been. But back to the thing that you asked, which is it helpful for someone to tell someone essentially they suck? No, I don't think so. For two different reasons. It doesn't matter what other people think. It's what matters is what we internalize, right? And what very much matters if we're trying to learn anything worthwhile is that we don't assign or ascribe a virtue to it. Like, and if you tell someone, hey, you suck at that, whatever it is, that is synonymous with you're bad at this, which is also synonymous with you should feel bad for not being better at this, which is, in my experience, not an effective motivator for the vast majority of people, especially if they're doing something that is not required of them.
That was the issue here, because he didn't want to do it and we were requiring it, and he was paving the path, I think, to the place he wanted to go.
Yeah. Well, and to be clear, none of this is a judgment on how you try and motivate your children to pursue anything. My daughter is taking drum lessons right now, and she practices sometimes she doesn't, and that's a fine line to walk, right? But is the thing that, and there's a lot of research to support this, for if you're chasing skill in anything, it comes quicker to you if it is fun, and if it is something that you want to do, and if it is something that you can focus on, the process of learning how to do the thing is the thing that you are focused on, not the outcome of the thing that you're doing. And you can get into like some of like the neuroscience of that. And obviously I'm not a neuroscientist, so please. Um, but I have stayed at several Holiday Inn Expresses and
Love that
have
commercial.
well, yeah, I don't know if it's a commercial anymore. I think all of us might just be of a certain vintage.
Yeah, exactly. That
Um,
we know that reference.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, that is the saddest thing about being a corporate drone is my younger coworkers don't get some of my references. And it's like, great, awesome. I am aged.
I had the same thing, except in the IT sphere. So many of our stuff got transferred to India, and I had three or four guys working for me in India, and I would say something that would most Americans would know, and they were clueless about it. So I had to stop the meeting, give them a background on what it meant when whatever I said, what I said, or referenced a movie or something like that. But they were super interested in learning it. So there were times when I would say, I'll send you a list of movies to see or TV shows or books or whatever, and they'd love it. They'd go off and read these things because they wanted to become more familiar with the American genre, I
Yeah,
guess. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Well,
tying this back into firearms, though, I
well,
mean,
hold on,
this is a
hold
serious
on.
business, right?
Yeah, well, hold on. The thing that I was going to say is that when we're learning anything to a high degree, like one of the important parts of that is BDNF, so like brain derived neurotropic factor, which is there's a bunch of podcasts that you can listen to on that. Some of them are very cringy because it's bro culture, whatever. But there are some very interesting, valid podcasts on that. It's essentially fertilizer for your brain, helps the maturation of neurons, right? And synaptic plasticity and things of that nature. But whenever we're learning something new, we're forming new neural pathways, and especially when you're at a growth phase, it being fun is good. So there's a difference between learning something new and like how you would approach that, how you would train someone that is learning new skills versus validating skills under pressure. And a lot of people confuse those two things frequently. Even some very good trainers confuse those two modalities, right? So, if you imagine the trope of some firearms instructors shouting at one of their students, get the gun up, whatever, while they're trying to perform some sort of emergency reload in the rain, because if it's not raining, we're not training. You know, um, that is validating skills under pressure. Now, there are maybe some exceptions to that because task overload can be a very effective way to, force people into automaticity. What I mean by that is, a lot of people will stay kind of stuck in that consciously competent band because they don't ever get pushed out of that band. And there are some neat tricks that you can do as an instructor to get someone to perform very well without thinking about it. And once you show a student that something is possible, as long as you point it out to them, point out that they did that, if you do something once, can you do it again? The answer is yes.
What's an example of that you'd use on the range?
That I would use on the range?
Yeah, because look, you've clearly put a lot of thought into this. I mean, I think that a lot of people are going to be going, it sucks that you're not in the space actively because you clearly have a great deal of knowledge and a lot to offer.
I've certainly got some I've I've got some bright spots that make up for my low spots, I'm sure. But the as far as like something that I would use for that, um, there's videos you can search this. There's an assessment that I came up with called Dot Assessment Madness. It's essentially it's sort of a variation of the same concept that Tom Gibbons was doing with the casino drill. But it's a 55 round assessment with multiple targets, and it gives you a lot to think about and forces some reloads to occur at unknown spots just due to the nature of it. And, you know, one, I'm biased because I came up with it. So take my opinion with a grain of salt. But I've found that to be a very effective way, as long as it's preceded by some instruction and a baseline level of skill to push someone at least momentarily from consciously competent to unconsciously competent.
For those who haven't seen this, by the way, John is talking about a series of targets at different ranges, both primary and offhand, that use 2-inch circles.
Yeah, 2-inch circles.
Ow.
There's no offhand shooting in that.
There's not? Okay.
No. No, it's 55 rounds, all freestyle, so both hands on the gun. It's meant to be shot from concealment, though that doesn't really matter too much. You could do it with a table start. If if you were forced to. But again, you need to be able to hit a 2-inch circle at 3 yards, which
some people struggle with that. Yeah.
Some people do. But again, it's not a foundational assessment, right?
No.
So that was primarily ran in a class that most people would consider to be at the least an intermediate class.
This drill with 2-inch circles is supposed to be fun.
I mean, I enjoy it. Other people enjoyed it. Other people didn't enjoy it. It really kind of depends on, what kind of mindset you go into it with, right?
Self-deprecating would be helpful because
you don't think so? Self-deprecation doesn't really. I mean, again, so trust me, I'm very self-deprecating, right? But most self-deprecation comes from a place of some level of insecurity, right?
Sure.
And the environment that I've tried to create in that specific class, and if I end up running more classes at some point, again, I could be convinced. I'm not saying I wouldn't if somebody asked me to. I'm not very inclined to pursue it a ton. If somebody asks, it's kind of like your podcast. I didn't, I'm not out here cruising, trying to go on the shows, but if someone wants me on the show, happy to. If you think that's, something you're interested in, you'll get value out of that. Sure. Same thing with a class. If someone wanted me to come out and teach a class, they could hit me up and talk to me about it. And, I wouldn't knee jerk say no, but anyway, the thing that when you're learning something new, I know for a fact, and there's tons of research and science to back me up on this. If you can not ascribe negative feelings to yourself or your performance and just treat things as, just events, right? It streamlines the learning process. It's oh, this is the thing that happened. Here's why it happened. Here's, what I'm going to do. So, I'm focused on the correct part of the process. When, as far as self-deprecation or things like that. And again, I promise I am more fun at parties. I am doing a lot of well actualing, and I do apologize for that. But, the mindset, the having a growth mindset is incredibly important. So not having a fixed image of yourself, not having a fixed image of your abilities, not falling into those patterns of like self-deprecation or insecurity surrounding your own performance in front of your peers, which, for a lot of people is a very vulnerable place to be. And just being able to get the training value out of my instructor is putting me in situations where, if your instructor is good, your instructor is going to put you in situations where you fail because no one ever learned anything by succeeding.
That is correct.
Like, yeah. So, and it's always interesting to me. And don't get me wrong, like I spent the vast majority of my training career when I would go and take classes falling into the same trap. So I totally get it, but I've been to something like 2,300 hours of training, probably spent $250,000 going to training classes, and doing that sort of thing. And I could have, if you want to talk about being frugal, like with training, the best thing that you can do to be frugal with your training is get your mind right before you go and do it so that you get the most value out of it. And the amount of money that I wasted or time I wasted, and the time wasn't wasted, but I could have gotten more out of it by being, so wrapped up in my own head and my own thoughts of like how I was supposed to perform or who I was supposed to be or how I disappointed myself or what conclusions someone would draw. No one else cared because everyone else was dealing with the same things that I was dealing with.
Right.
And that's the point.
Yep.
Like, and so I say all that to say, and we are bouncing around a little bit, so I apologize. But it's I'm on the East Coast, so it's kind of late for me. And I've always been squirrely, and I'm sure you can attest to, Craig. So if my brain latches onto something, I want to follow that thought.
Oh, you're a shiny object person. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm the yes, I am.
I'll back that up with what you were saying about perhaps the validation. I mean, you have to be able to validate yourself because you're the only opinion that really matters when it really comes down to it, unless it's an employment situation and your boss has to validate you because otherwise he fires you. I mean, that's different. But
well, there's social situations too where it kind of matters how you behave.
Well, that's true. You get the girl, you don't. I mean, yeah, those things are
you
are
have
real.
your friends or you don't, right?
And they're and sometimes they're very binary. But I was the one class I was in at TACCON, which was just a couple months ago. Mas Ayub was in a class with me, and he wasn't teaching the class; he was taking the class. So if you're in a class and Mas is a student and you're a student too, you're like, I'm in the right class. I'm not going anywhere. I'm absolutely taking this class. And later in the day, we happened to be talking when we were, waiting for another class. And he said, what you did on the range today, that was very impressive. And I almost turned around. It's like, is he talking to somebody else? Like, I got a compliment from Mas Ayub that I was impressive. And I didn't think I was impressive. But I guess contextually, he felt that what I had done was above and beyond expectation. And I guess that was very valid. I mean, that paid for the whole trip, just that one sentence.
Well, so Chris Seipert, who's, someone I used to work with, and very, very excellent trainer. But something, I've heard him say more than once is that, people need to be equally adept at patting themselves on the back and slapping themselves in the face as the situation dictates. Right. And, you need to be able to accurately, this is the goal, to be able to be like, all right, good job, or not great. And, specific to, external validation, right? And why, like, trust me, I get it. Having someone you look up to, and telling you, hey, you did a good job. That's, that is an incredibly valuable thing. In a perfect world, we would be able to provide ourselves that, but very few people can. And very very few people can, reliably 100% of the time. And I don't even know that you should. Like, we're social creatures, like that matters. Um, and I think that if we're bringing it back to the whole range Pokemon thing, aside from a marketing ploy to get students into classes that, many instructors, myself included, take advantage of, it's good to have a trophy and one that you had to work hard for to earn. Like, that is the sort of thing that keeps you, dedicated when motivation fails. And motivation's always going to fail. Where the rubber meets the road is kind of like, how much dedication do you have? So yeah, I feel like we've wandered far
somewhat
far off of the.
astray. Yeah, we're a
Yeah.
little bit far afield here. So, I
Well,
think
yeah, these are the conversations that I like to have, though, and I do know that, you know we kind of started out talking about gear, and I'm sure there were probably some other gear questions you wanted to ask. Even when I was still doing this full time, the gear was of minimal interest to me for the most part. Even less so now that I'm, you know, uh, 2 feet out the door with like a pinky finger still like clinging onto the frame of the door, right?
well, I'll
But
definitely
like,
cut that out. But
no, 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 you just leave it in. Um, it's just my perspective, right? And it's worth as literally as much as you paid for it. Uh,
well, then if we did want to roll, because I did want to cover some of the content that you still have posted, which I think has a degree of timelessness to it. Your articles, perhaps you could, if we do want to talk gear a little bit, you saw a lot of gear when you were training people on range. People make gear mistakes. They buy the wrong thing. They don't proportion the money that they spend correctly. They'll spend perhaps too much on an optic and not enough on the barrel, or maybe the other way around. They'll spend too much on something that they were told is cool to own, but really doesn't fit their hand. The Desert Eagle type people, right?
yeah.
What do you got to say about the things that you've learned just based on not only your time in firearms, but your time particularly as an instructor? Where do people make the right investments, and what should they avoid, or how should they apportion their money?
Uh, I mean, that is so subjective to the person and their budget. And, even the word frugal, that means
It
very
means different
different
things to
things.
different people. Well, I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
Ken, tell them.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, Craig and I mean, we talk about Frugal Firearms, but I am definitely on the cheap side of the scale. I mean, a minimalist, least expensive way to do something. And Craig is a little bit higher up the scale, willing to pay a little more, willing to do a little more. And for how much more are you paying, and
But
what are
it's
you really getting back?
but it's the V word, right? It's value. I
It's
mean, we're trying
value.
to. It's value.
I
So
don't see the
yeah,
value, and you do, and that's fine. And it is a different perspective, but it's a good dichotomy that you and I have in
yes.
that regard, because it allows us to bounce things off each other, and you know,
So I I'm going to I'm going to be probably problematic for the format of your show, but bear with me. And I'm going to quote Terry Pratchett, and specifically um, the character Captain Samuel Vimes and the famous boot theory. And this will explain where I'm at with most gear. Um, and the quote is, the reason that the rich were so rich, Vimes reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take boots, for example. You earn $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50, but an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. Those were the kind of boots Vimes always bought and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where he was in Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. But the thing was, that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that'd still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time, while the poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and would still have wet feet. So I got to drop, um, a Terry Pratchett passage into a firearms podcast. Go me. But what I'm really trying to say with that is, frugal is all well and good, but there's a level to it, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
And so as far as what people should buy or not buy,
I could not have named the podcast the Don't Waste Money Firearms Podcast. I mean, I could have named it that, but it doesn't flow.
well, and to be clear, I'm not attacking the format of the show or the premise of the question.
Yeah.
It's a great question. But, and I warned you ahead of time that I might be the wrong person to ask for this. I did. Multiple different times.
And so did Greg Ellifritz. Ellifritz just said, "I'm not frugal. You don't want me."
Okay. Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, is that, asking a dude that spent, pretty frequently $35,000 at a time on ammunition how to be frugal is probably like asking a billionaire how to be a good person. I don't know that they know how, right? But, I think conceptually, if I kind of close my eyes and squint, the way that I would answer that question is, there are a lot of people trying to sell you things. I used to be one of them, and I used to be pretty good at it. And the ways that they will try and sell you things is by making these claims of, whatever, extra skill can be bought, or shiny thing over here, or new feature. And the trap, and this is where it's hard, is it can be difficult to spot that unless you have the experience to spot it. And if you're starting out or don't have the means to get that experience, then you're kind of stuck trusting, some some opinions that, maybe they're valid, maybe they aren't. I will say, and this is a Todd Green quote. And if you don't know who Todd Green was, you can find writings of his still. They live on the internet. There's videos. You can go to pistoltraining.com. But, he was famous for saying uncommon guns are uncommon for a reason. If we're talking about like handguns or something like that, sticking with any of the major manufacturers with a reputation for quality, so Glock, Smith and Wesson, HK, they do have some affordable guns now. Ruger, actually, the RXM, which is essentially their copy of a Glock Gen 3,
right?
Probably,
right.
By all accounts.
Yeah, we talked about that, and we saw it at Shot Show, and we talked about that, and I came back, I was raving about it. I thought, now here's a value proposition that, I mean, Glocks are great, don't get me wrong, but you can save a couple $100, and get one which is just like, it works.
It's a Gen 3 Glock.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Glock.
It's an improved Gen 3 Glock. So, like, if you were asking me, hey, handgun, what's frugal? What's the one to get? Probably that one. Now, full disclosure, I don't have any experience with Ruger's variation of that. I do have a lot of experience with Gen 3 Glocks, though.
Right.
And you want a Toyota Corolla. You don't want a Ford Pinto with the gas tanks on the outside of the frame. Then not great. And you don't need a Porsche 911, but yeah, the Toyota Corolla.
I'm not convinced I don't need a 911. I'm at the age where a 911 may actually be a necessity.
the perfect example of this is the Toyota, perfectly acceptable Toyota versus a 10-cylinder Audi with a Lamborghini engine in it.
Well, yeah,
Well, yeah,
but
there's
there's nothing
that.
wrong with
Yeah,
that either.
you're
Like,
right.
And
so
Craig had that car I just referenced. Wonderful car, but I'm like, oh dear God, how much was the tune-up on that thing, Craig?
you had an
Well,
R8? Was it an R8 or was it
no,
a
no, it was the S6
okay,
that had the V10 engine in it. So it's a little detuned
nice.
from the
Just a little, just a
from
little.
well, I mean, it's still made
425 horsepower, normally aspirated. No,
454. Thank you very much.
454, normally
That's
aspirated, no
nothing in
turbos. I
2026.
I
That's
know.
nothing in
It was in
2026.
2008.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, it was. Well, no, but like, here's the thing, right? It's okay to just like this stuff to like this stuff, and it's also okay to, you know, like, here's the difference. So, if you're actually constrained by this, like by money,
Yeah.
a high point will kill somebody deader than fried chicken if they need killed. Um, it launches the same 9 millimeter HST
Yep.
that a $5,000, bespoke custom 1911 will.
Sure.
And there's plenty of instances where that has done the trick, right? So if you're actually constrained by money, and like fundamentally constrained by money, then you know there's a lot going on there, and I don't know that I would feel comfortable making a definitive statement about what's best for your situation.
But I think the proportional question still stands. And the reason I say that is this. Um, I think that people, by and large, due to ignorance, and you already mentioned that, and ignorance simply by being new or not having enough reps to have proper vetting of whatever opinion that they actually hold. That isn't their fault. It's just a reality of they apply as much knowledge as they have. Will tend to get maybe either get talked into or follow the best ad copy or something like that, and buy a $400 rifle and put a Night Force on it or something like
Yeah.
that was
Well,
just way out of proportion, and they should have thought differently. And you've
Yeah,
probably seen that.
yeah. Well, so here's the main ones, right? The biggest one is going to be, well, the military uses it. That should not be a consideration. That has zero bearing on really anything for civilian context. Um, and the military uses all sorts of things that the people that actually use those things in the military think are hot garbage. So it being used by the military is a common marketing ploy inside of the firearms industry, and I would ignore that. I'm not saying that things that the military use can't be amazing, but like, if that's your deciding factor and that's it, like that's what you're basing the decision off of. For me, that is not um, a great sort of tipping point for being on the fence of whether you should get something or not.
right. Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm one of the mentor instructors on a couple of groups we have here at the San Diego County Gun Owners. And I try to go out there and help, like, at least once a month, and help train new shooters. And these are people who, for example, who do Guns and Moses. It's a Jewish shooting club that goes out on Sunday mornings about once a month. And these people are going to own exactly one firearm in their entire life.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be buying a whole bunch of stuff, and they're probably not going to practice with it as much as they should. That's almost true with almost anybody. But I've talked about this several times. I'm often times the only guy who brings this up, but I'm like, I think a revolver is not necessarily a bad choice at all. And we talk about the law of three, which there's probably variations of it. It's most civilian shootings involve less than 3 rounds, less than 3 seconds, and less than 3 yards. That's the vast majority of them. And for that, a revolver fits perfectly, particularly if you don't practice with it a lot. It will go bang, and if it doesn't, you squeeze the trigger again, and hopefully it'll go bang the next time. But uh, anyway, that's frugal.
Yeah. I question. Yeah, I've certainly heard that the law of three. I question whether why I question whether that was ever actually true or if that was anecdotal. I have studied this quite a bit, and I saw a lot of variation there. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Whether that's as true in 2026 as it used to be would be another thing that I would question.
Well, you mean with higher capacity magazines, like when someone just mag dumps and just because they can?
Just things change, right? The nature of engagements change. The nature of you know the nature of capabilities change for adversaries. Like this obviously is not a podcast on geopolitics, right? But I kind of, I think you could draw a corollary between what did Russia think when they were going into Ukraine versus what did Russia find when they went into Ukraine, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes our assessment of the capabilities of the people that we might have an encounter with. A lot of people spend time on a very sunny disposition of what that's going to look like, and I don't know if that's a great idea.
Well, then tell me about the rise of the Sentinel, then, an
Oh
article you
God.
wrote. It seems that
Yeah,
seems to be related, doesn't it?
it kind of does. You know, if again, I was trying to make my mark and coin a phrase. But the premise of that, right? And a black swan event would be another phrase. I could have just, talked about black swan events. But again, I had to be original.
There's nothing wrong with originality.
Yeah. So as far as outlier events, which is what's being discussed, I mean, I don't even know that this is an outlier event, just things are different. There's the prevalence of fully automatic Glocks that are getting yanked off of the streets because somebody, bought a sear off of wish.com or 3D printed one. Like the world has changed somewhat. And all I'm saying is, whether or not it is true that the vast majority of instances are 3 rounds, 3 yards, 3 seconds. Yeah, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't have any issue with the idea of a revolver. I will say if someone's not going to shoot and they're going to have a revolver, it should probably be a 22 caliber revolver. Um, for a couple of different reasons.
Hmm.
That would be my preference, or at least the advice that I would give. But you know, I'm not very married to
Is that because of recoil management, or is that because of flinch
lots of
response,
different
or
reasons. Well, it's because they're fun to shoot, and if someone actually shoots it once, they might actually want to shoot it again. Where
yeah.
I can guarantee if the first time they shoot, a handgun is a medium or small frame revolver chambered in 38, or God forbid 357, they're
Right.
never going to shoot it again. But yes, it's also generally easier for untrained people to hit things with 22 caliber than it is, um, again, in the framework of a revolver.
And accuracy matters a lot.
Yeah, some might say that accuracy is final. Um, speed is fine, accuracy is final. I believe that is a Hackathorn quote. So hopefully I'm not misattributing that to Hackathorn. I'm sure Ken wouldn't mind. But the, you know, again, so what gun should someone get? I don't know. Who are you? Where do you live? How much money do you actually have? there's an amazing article that Greg wrote in his newsletter at one point talking about, you know, the woman that only had $140 to spend on a gun and a box of ammunition. At least that's how I'm remembering it. And like that entire conversation, again, I don't know that I'm a great person to ask because I'm carrying around a $1,200 pistol, even though I don't do this anymore. Right. So,
Well, you might have to do it sometime. I mean, you never know. That's the whole purpose of that article, right?
yeah, I mean, at this point, yes. Is it possible? Absolutely. Is it likely? No.
Oh,
No.
it's never likely. If you said it yourself, I'm going to remind you of your own words here, I think. And not that you need reminding, but you did have in one article that you wrote, the one entitled, very short article in a couple paragraphs, I only carry when I need to. I think you make a
Mhm.
good point of if you think you need to carry, then you probably shouldn't be going to that spot in the first place.
Yeah. Well, so primarily this is funny. The primary reason that still carry it all, because like I feel for where my life is at, and both, spiritually, metaphysically, you know, uh, location wise, like geolocation wise, I'd be fine carrying around pepper spray, and feel pretty comfortable doing that. I don't go very many places. The places I do go, there aren't very many people. That's that's just the reality. Or I'm going to one of the kids' school, can't carry there.
Mhm.
So, as far as and I somewhat lost my thought, but as far as the needing to carry, the main reason why I still carry at all is because I'd feel really damn silly, if you know I was wrong with my risk assessment and have the ability and skill that I do have, and not in comparison to anyone else, but just, I have put a lot of time into this, and I'm passing good at it. And it'd feel pretty damn silly if I found myself in a situation where I did actually need one and didn't have it.
The Tom Givens statistic, right?
Yeah, yeah, kind of.
And for those who don't know, I think the number was 81.
It
Um,
could be these days. When
I
I
think
last looked, it was around 76. It was like
that's
76, 0, and 3. But
I thought it was
generally, if you need a
I
fire,
thought it was 0 and 1.
it's happened more than once.
Oh, has it?
Um,
Well,
yeah.
okay, we'll
So
explain that for the audience though.
yeah, it was so the wins, losses, and forfeits. So Tom Gibbons, excellent trainer. He had a physical location in Memphis. For a very long time, he was the only person in Memphis that could teach the class so that people could get their concealed carry permit. This is before sort of the revolution and shall issue carry permits, right? So if someone was getting a carry permit in Memphis, chances are Tom trained them at least for a period of time there. And to the best of my knowledge, he owns the record for um, you know the largest collection of data regarding student involved shootings. So like students of his that have been involved in shootings. I did what I did for 10 years. I've got two students that were involved in shootings. Tom did it much, much longer than still doing it. So like some things, some things come and go. The classics just hang around. And Tom's an incredible trainer. Um, he's had, maybe it is 81 at this point. I don't know. But it was 76 students win in a shooting. 0 students lose a shooting. And then he called it forfeits. And I think it was 3. 3 students forfeited their shooting. And essentially it was they got killed when they were not armed. And so, yes, that is something that does poke around in the back of my head. And, you know, if I carry, that is probably one of the reasons why I carried.
Yeah, that's important. And I think that, I mean, I agree that we also did a show on pepper spray, and pepper spray solves numerically more problems than guns do.
Yeah.
But it's an escalation of force issue. It's a matter of being ready for different degrees, and sometimes escalation isn't your vote. You don't get to go, well, let's go step one. Well, step one didn't work, so step two. Well, that was pepper spray because step one was verbal de-escalation. Oh, well, that didn't work either, and now I have to go to the gun. Well, all that time, I'll tell you something that I do. I teach naval officers in a certain particular area that's rather esoteric. And one of the things that they sometimes get wrong is the consideration of doing a thing that and which they shouldn't be doing. And it shows up in something called battle orders. And what are battle orders? It's basically the checklist of things you do when you know what hits the fan. And they have this thing in there that says go do this one thing that they shouldn't do. And I say, if you do that one thing, you failed at everything I'm teaching you, because I'm teaching you how not to have to do that thing, and I'm not going to say what that thing is. But if they even talk about doing that thing, if they even take the time to talk about doing that thing, they're losing time when they should be going to the next step, because time matters, and it matters in what I teach, and it matters in real life, in the street circumstances as well.
Well, yeah, but so what you're talking about is the difference between a task and a priority, right? And or
That's an interesting way to put it. In the military, it's usually broken down by the tasks. I would call it a task because those tasks are laid out. Now, you might decide it's not a priority, but that takes a discussion to decide it's not a priority.
Yeah, so for again, and this is where context matters for civilian self-defense, incident. There's going to be a bunch of tasks, but in a given moment, there's only going to be one priority. And usually the priority involves some variation of stopping the fight. Is what you're doing supporting that, or is it not supporting that? Tons of tasks. Generally only one or two priorities. Rare that they're competing priorities. I don't know if that's true.
Melody would talk about Melody Lauer. If people don't know, that's one of John's frequent guests on his show when he was doing his show, and actually an upcoming guest, hopefully, on our show. I mean, I think she would talk about not literally multitasking, because I think that's the wrong term, but the complexities of, I'm in a self-protection, borrowing Jay Cooper's terminology rather than self-defense, a self-protection mode, but I have kids at my feet who are panicking and don't know what to do.
Yeah,
I have to manage those different things, and they're both priorities.
Yeah, no. I developed that class with Melody, and I taught it with her for 7 years. So I feel very confident in what she would say. And she's, she's going to say the same thing that I would say. So if we're talking about the children, and I let her speak to it because she's still teaching the class and I am not. But, in the in the violent encounter with children present, the children are a distraction. They're a red herring. They're something that a lot of people can confuse as a priority, but the priority and the best thing that you can do for the kids in that instance is ending the fight as quickly as possible. And we did tons of research, tons of force on force, tons of things, because like the natural inclinations and even some of the stuff that you would get out of best practices and the the VIP protection world don't carry over, right? Because generally, if we're talking about a violent encounter with their children present, the children are not the focus of the encounter usually. And if you use your heuristics and determine that they are the focus of the encounter, the priority is still the same, which is ending the encounter as soon as possible. But like things like interjecting yourself in between your kids and the threat, what we discovered, and there's a lot of real world sort of validation of this, is that would get kids shot a lot. Um, you know, the there it's a chaotic thing, right? But you know, I think that if we want to zoom out of like personal protections, some of the places to look where there's been a lot of actual vetted research on, which is going to be, bro science that is endemic inside of the training community, is you can look at like the aerial combat study by Boyd and a lot of the other things that have been done in regards to aerial combat.
You're talking about the OODA loop.
Well, I'm talking about the aerial combat study, and the OODA loop was part of that. But the study itself was actually a precursor to some work that a researcher later. So Colonel Boyd started to recognize something that would, a couple decades later, be named recognition prime decision making, which, if I remember correctly, was Gary Klein, who wrote several excellent books on it. Pretty sure Gary was his first name. I know it was Klein. So you can look this up. You can buy his book. I have a keyboard in front of me, so I can refresh my memory in real time. But isn't technology great? So
it is.
Yeah. So, but essentially, and William Maple used to talk about this a lot too, but like being able to prune down our decision-making tree, and make rapid decisions in environments that are thin on information, and select the correct priority and perform whatever is required for that priority. That's kind of where the skill is. And if we tie it back to the beginning of the show, because I'm sure we're at least getting close to my bedtime.
All of us, sir. All of us. We're old.
Yeah.
Ken and I are well advanced above your middle ageness.
Yeah. I'll be on Medicare next month. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's close to midnight here, and I have to get someone to school in the morning. But where was I going with that? Oh, so bringing it back to kind of like where we were sort of at with the beginning of all of this, and so talking about recognition, prime decision making, talking about, being able to select the priorities, and all of that becomes a lot easier to do if we've achieved unconscious competence. So automaticity. At the very beginning of the show, we were talking about levels of competency. Why does that matter? Why would someone want to train to that? Why would a frugal person dedicate the time, money and effort to do that sort of thing? And the reason is because if you actually need to defend yourself, there's going to be a lot of things going on. There are going to be a lot of things to think about. And, we have a fixed capacity to process information, right? There is a hardware limitation, from a cognitive standpoint, as far as what we can handle or not handle. And, if the vast majority of your cognitive function is tied up trying to just work the gun, that's not great. It might work. It could work. But it's unideal. You're creating an unideal set of circumstances. And if your motivation for all of this is based, on personal protection, it behooves you to, this is a path you have selected for yourself. to dedicate the resources and time and energy to at least get to the point where you are unconsciously competent. You can operate your firearm in a safe manner without really thinking about it much. And a lot of people will hear me say that and they're like, "Oh, I need to get better at shooting." No, I mean, I would actually argue that like muzzle direction, like unconscious. If I had to pick one thing for someone to be able to do unconsciously, would be it'd be to keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Like if you want to get good at that, you can do that for free. Here's a real frugal way to do it. Get a blue gun, so like an inert plastic gun, nothing that can fire a real round, and start walking around your house around other people, and don't point the blue gun at them, and just work on that.
Or a Mantis Titan X, right?
Well, but that's not frugal. Like you can
It's
do the
cheaper
thing
than
I
shooting
said.
a friend or a neighbor or a family member.
Yeah, but the blue gun is
It's
cheaper than
cheaper.
the Mantis X.
It is cheaper.
Yeah, it's a quarter of
Come
the price.
on, I'm trying to follow the format of the show.
And John,
And
I'd like to point out that I really appreciate that. Now, Craig, there, again, this is one of those separation areas, but I appreciate the fact that you are.
We're not
aiming
going to
towards the
disparage our
frugal.
friends at Mantis, are we?
No, they're
No,
excellent.
because they're great. Okay, so John, you're right in finishing up what's been really a very unique show. I mean, not only excellent but unique. I mean, we've never had this show is cerebral. This is different than other stuff we've done because the other stuff is usually product focused or specifically training focused, but yours is more upper brain, like what mental state are you in and how do you get to success? If
Yeah.
you were to apportion, I'm just going to give you three choices: the firearm, which can include the optic, the ammunition, or the training. Where do you spend your money?
I think investing in yourself is something that's going to be, you know, training is never going to depreciate. Like anything you invest in yourself is something that you have for, as long as you're there. Obviously, if you get to later stages of life and you have cognitive decline, then yeah, okay, maybe it'll depreciate then. But at that point, you could argue that you're not there anymore anyway. So, you've got it as long as you've got you. Right. Whatever gun you think is cool, or somebody on Instagram posted it, and you want to be one of the cool kids, or whatever,
Whatever motivates you to carry, whatever motivates you to go to the range, whatever motivates you to practice.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, or whatever, newest engineered chunk of copper and lead is currently in phase. That's great. 10 years from now, it's going to suck. Like it just will. There will be something newer and better. There will always be something newer and better. And yeah, training evolves, but the experience of going and putting yourself in a position to solve problems that an instructor sets for you, learn things about yourself, learn things about how training is conducted. I'm going to say that is probably the best place to go. Again, if you have the means. I did pick the most expensive thing out of your three options, though.
That's fair, because you're making a value judgment based on that, and that's the point.
Well,
that's the point of the show.
Here's the thing. At one point or another, I had probably 100 guns sitting in my safe. If I have 10 at this point, I would be surprised. I've shot personally, documented, probably about 1 million rounds of ammunition. I don't have the ammo anymore. I don't have most of the guns anymore. I've still got the experiences of the training. And it made me think about things that I wouldn't have thought about. And it allowed me the opportunity to sort of form the opinions that I have, that everyone is welcome to, ignore or not at their discretion. My feelings will not be hurt either way. As I said at one previous point, like it's, my opinions are are based off of where I'm at in life and where I've been, and are worth exactly what everyone has paid for them, right? And I'm not too invested in being right about any of this stuff anymore, which I wish I had come to that sooner.
So you're saying that your kung fu is not necessarily better than mine.
Yeah, probably not. So, well, maybe better than yours, Craig. I don't know, but
Ken will
um,
attest to that. That is true. Your kung fu, John, is better than mine.
yeah. So, but no, it's again, and I apologize. I look, the question of gear, the question of what stuff, like I think everyone starts there. That's the natural place to start. And there's nothing wrong with it. And if that's what you enjoy and if that's where you want to hang out, that's fine. Like that's great. Not disparaging that even a little bit. I do think that on a long enough timeline, if people do this long enough, you eventually start to de-emphasize the gear. Like I've never seen it not happen. Especially with people that frankly, the more training you take, the less concerned you become with the gear because it's at the end of the day, it's kind of it's kind of like talking about driving a car, right? If we're talking about driving a car defensively and we want to have a conversation about like what kind of tires should I put on my car? Like there's value in those tires. Like there are, like depending on your use case. Um, you know, some are, some are racing slicks versus, all seasons. Like there is a quantifiable advantage or disadvantage to both of those things in certain situations. And like that's a valuable conversation to have. But, it's not probably the grand sum total of the conversations that could be had about driving, right? And that's kind of how I think of it inside of the firearm space too. And it again, and in fairness, I did warn you that like, okay, we can talk about that. I don't know if I'm the right guy for it, but I do hope I do hope it was an enjoyable conversation, and I do hope that it gives people something to think about.
This show is about perspectives, and I told you, or I warned you, if you want to use that vernacular, that the show, I'm the facilitator, and Ken's the facilitator, and the guest is the person whose message we're facilitating. So it's really, as much as it's, Ken and I own the show, it's really your show today. And, people will find value in that, or they won't. And in either case, they will get exactly what they paid for.
Yeah. Hey, that's it. So I
Yeah.
do hope when you run this, because I think this conversation has been amazing.
Thank
I
you.
hope you don't. I
Wow.
hope you don't. I hope you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was so good to hear you say that.
I hope you don't edit a single word out of it. Just let it play. Let it. If your format supports that, let people get the entire experience. I think, and it'll save you time. I think that'll be a good exercise for you.
I'll probably take out a few pauses, and if I
No,
found myself saying which
no, no, no,
I
no, no,
hate
no.
it when I do
No.
that.
Hey, look,
Oh,
see, no, just let it happen, Craig. That is, listen, if you go back and listen to the first couple seasons of Ballistic Radio,
they're
here's a
different.
number right there. You will get a ton of those. And like just for this one instance, as a favor to me, just let the show happen.
I'm in
Okay.
agreement. I'm in agreement. So, Craig and I will talk about this, but I'm in agreement with you, John.
Yeah, just post it unedited. Unedited. There's a lot of ids in
I
there.
will need to put some sort of a disclaimer in there. The other time I had to do a disclaimer was in episode 3 where I used the wrong microphone and I sounded like I was inside a 55-gallon barrel. I'm still embarrassed about that during episode 3. So I
Yeah,
will.
geez. just,
Okay.
you know, hey,
So you have a lot of sway with me, sir. So you might just get me
I'm
killed.
aware. I know exactly what I'm doing.
Damn it.
So,
Uh, okay. All right. Well, we
All
will
right.
let you go get some sleepy so you can
Yes,
be a fully functioning adult tomorrow and hopefully not run afoul of any evil because of fatigue.
John, very enjoyable, and thank you for your time.
yeah, no, Ken, I appreciate I appreciate you. It was good meeting you. Craig, I appreciate you as well. Thanks for having me on the show.
We're going to go to a concert
And
someday, sir. I'm going to make
uh,
that happen.
hey, that's if you want to make it out to Ohio, that's probably your safest bet
Hey,
there.
hey, by the way, if you want to talk about frugal, now this is good. Ken is going to be aghast at this. So Rush is coming up, first time in 10 years. I, no kidding, spent over $800 on the ticket. I'm appalled at myself that I spent that much. I still can't get over how much I spent on that damn ticket.
That is not the most I've ever spent on a concert ticket.
Okay. I feel a little bit better now. And
Yeah,
Ken's like, what the hell is wrong with you?
yeah. You look, life's short. Um,
It is.
life's short. I've yet to see any evidence that uh, I get to take any of this with me. And the I play a lot of video games, and there's a concept inside a video game. And if this makes it into the episode too, I'm fine with it. So I don't know where you want the natural stopping point to be for the episode. Probably about 5 minutes ago, but um, there's this concept in video games called "too good to use," which is they give you an item in the video game, and it's like, wow, this is great, and you know so you like, all right, I'm gonna wait to use this until a really good spot. And then all of a sudden the fucking game's over and you never used it because you were too scared to. And that's kind of how I view sort of money, right?
Yeah.
Um, like there's that I saved up for that I don't own it anymore. But something I don't regret is any of the times where I spent too much damn money to go and do something with someone, or some experience. And yeah, why? Like, you don't get bonus points, and no one's going to come down and pat you on the back and like, hey, you saved an extra $1,000. You're a better person. You know, go spend it. Go see the shows that you want to see. Life's short. People aren't around forever. Um, that's kind of my view on it.
So next week, I guess I'm going to be starting up the spend down to your last dollar firearms podcast. The empty the wallet firearms podcast.
So, yeah, I mean, there's degrees to this, right? Because
The show is
if you
about
get
balance. The show has always been about finding balance for people who remember that was the niche, right? To fill was that a lot of shows don't pay attention to the fact that crap, I've got other bills to pay, and I really can't justify. I'm just going to say Night Force because they're expensive. I don't mean anything
yeah,
bad
sure.
about Night Force, but I can't afford a Night Force, so I'm going to go get something else that I can afford because my
Well,
use case doesn't support, as Ken would say, jumping out of helicopters and things like that because I don't have institutional funding and I have to make those choices. That's the
well,
purpose of the show.
so the thing is, the companies that make those products have more money to support podcasts.
Ooh, I hadn't thought about that. Is that
Yeah,
why I'm not
well,
sponsored? Is that why I have no sponsors?
um, I mean, generally the companies that are making affordable or cheap, depending on the quality, right? Their marketing budget is going to be a cost per acquisition model towards like, yeah, you can have a discount code. And if you have, people that buy stuff, maybe you'll get like $5 out of that. Whereas, the number of companies that I worked with and or for to where that was very comfortably a six-figure payday for me. Um, yeah, so again, like no judgment, but there's a monetary consideration to, like, if it's a labor of love, then it's a labor of love, and that's commendable. Um, but the thing that I said, like the Terry Pratchett quote, like I do believe that most of the stuff that's cheap is not very good. The vast majority of it is not very good. And that is one of the reasons why I didn't, you know, like, it's not like I didn't know you were going to want to ask me about things. And I didn't particularly feel like answering any of those questions because, well, one, I'm contrarian. But two, like in my
No.
experience, no, never. But like also in my experience, those things just aren't very good. They're good as lucky rabbit's feet, but like if you actually use them in any meaningful sense, like they'll break, and you end up spending more money than you would have if you had just gone and bought the thing that was fucking expensive in the first place.
The cry once, buy once
Yeah.
theory. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, but it's
There's
not a
some-
theory. And like I've seen that borne out time and time again, with one exception. I'll tell you who you should have on if you haven't already is Claude Werner, because he's like the shitty gun whisperer.
Not yet. Have not had him yet.
Like he's the only person I've ever met that can own a shitty gun and actually have it like last and function. And I don't know what it is, but he's got some sort of force field around him that makes these things not trash.
Okay.
So-
I will drop that as a challenge to him to not counter, but let's say balance your statements.
Well, no, I mean, so these statements are off the record. But
oh wait, then I'm not including this in the
yeah,
show.
I mean,
okay, you said you said every minute. You have not heard the end of the recording yet.
that I mean,
okay.
Honestly, do what you will. If I were to pick a natural stopping point, it would have been right around where it's like, hey guys, thanks for having me on. So, but I'm not online anymore. So it's, and 50% of the people hate my guts anyway. And the other 50% think I'm okay. So it's like, no one's opinion is going to change if they heard this part. And like, it's just my perspective. Right. But
yeah.
And then you kind of get into a larger question. It's like, well, if we want to have a conversation about what should people buy that they're not ever actually going to use, well, should they buy anything?
See, right, exactly. Yeah. Don't talk about the stuff don't talk about stuff that no one's ever going to buy without institutional funds.
Well, no, that's not even what I mean. What I mean is like, so if we have a conversation about like, here, what's the cheapest gun you can get away with? But you're not going to go out and shoot it, and it's going to live in a closet. And it's going to live in a closet. I mean, but like that's the other extreme is true. Yeah, to be clear, the other extreme is true as well, to where like someone's got a $10,000 rifle that they never shoot, and it's a safe queen. But like it's the same. It's two different sides of the same coin. If you're not going to fucking use it, actually, why buy it in the first place? At that point, the frugal decision is go pick up a different hobby, and have your self-defense katana or bear spray by the door or dry chemical fire or whatever, right? And the idea of like a gun sitting in a drawer or a quick access safe that you look at every 20 years, that horrifies me. Like that's borderline negligent in my mind. Because like you now have a firearm that you cannot operate safely. Not actually.
Right. Yeah, because by definition, you're not training with it.
Yeah. So it's kind of this horrible catch-22. You know what I mean?
I do.
And hopefully I'm not like giving you an existential crisis or making you question like anything, but that's just kind of where I'm at with it.
I expected a contrarian on the show and I got it. And I expected a bit of controversy and I got that too. And that's fine because,
well, hopefully the controversy part is once the recording's already over or the recording's still going on, you can choose to include whatever you include. But, well, hey, I appreciate
Thank you, my
guys.
friend. Get some
Alrighty.
sleep, and I hope we talk again before 3 more years go by.
Reach out whenever.
Man.
I'm around.
Alrighty.
All right.
So,
Bye-bye.
Thank you, John.
alrighty.
Damn. That was interesting.
All right. Well, today we've had an opportunity to speak to John Johnston. He's given us some really interesting things to think about, and I'm hoping our listeners have enjoyed it. And if you have, let us know. And Craig, you can give us the email address and so forth.
Yeah, Frugal Firearms Podcast at gmail.com is the email address. Questions, comments, concerns, offers to do shows. If you have counter opinions or supportive opinions or a product you want to, push on our show, all those are welcome. Apologies to the audience for not having something out sooner. It's interesting because I had a bunch of people queued up, and then I started traveling, and so did they. The NRA annual meeting came up, and it occupied some of our guest time. And so what was supposed to be a 2-week gap turned into about a month. So again, apologies for that, but we're going to work on catching up. And a new network that we're about to show up on. We will reveal that very soon. And again, thanks very much to John Johnston of Ballistic Radio. And if you didn't notice in the beginning of the show, the whole inspiration of what we're doing here, Ken and I, it's our own flavor of his show. So, if you run out of episodes to listen to for us, go listen to his at ballisticradio.com. Hey, listeners, just as a reminder, in episode 30, where we featured Jan Sabo from Cool Fire Trainer, he has done something very unusual for you guys. And Ken, what do you think that might be?
He's given us a discount code to and encouraged us all to go out there and get Cool Fire, which both Craig and I are both either purchasing. I'm purchasing for the first time myself because I've always been using Craig's, so I'm getting my own version of it. Yeah, I know, the Frugal. I'm buying my entire own new system, and Craig, I think you're enhancing some of the products that they offer there, and he's giving us a discount code. So, Craig.
And what is that discount code? That discount code is Frugal15. So FRUGAL15, and that'll get you 15% off, which, hey guys, Cool Fire Trainer is not the cheapest stuff out there, but Ken and I both believe in it. We both think it's a frugal investment because it's
Absolutely.
worth it. And you don't see sales from this company. You really don't very often at all. So if you want to save a little bit of money right now, jump on it before they pull the rug out from underneath that offer. He didn't give me a timeline on that, but don't wait. Do not wait. All right. Hey, thanks very much.
I will give you room to edit out the last 10, 15 minutes or so when I
You mean when you
told
started
what I
dropping
said.
F-bombs and stuff? Yeah, I'll probably do something with that. Yeah. I noticed that your syntax changed. Like, I think at the point where you wanted to cut it, you just started swearing.
I mean, that seems like a really low-key, kind of diabolical way to ensure that, the recording ended when I fucking wanted it to. And that you already said that you don't have the capability to do that. And
no, I said I hadn't done it. I didn't say I couldn't.
You could do it.
Okay, yeah. I can do it. But I will honor your request and keep almost everything.
Almost everything. I like that.